Captain Marcus Chen stood at attention in the gleaming hall of the Galactic Council's reward chamber, sweat beading on his forehead despite the climate-controlled environment. Around him, holographic displays showed the faces of billions across thousands of worlds, all watching as the greatest heroes of the recent war against the Void Devourers received their honors. The ceremony had been going on for 3 standard hours. War heroes from dozens of species had stepped forward to claim their rewards: advanced technology, territorial grants, genetic enhancements, even immortality serums. The Zephyrian admiral who had led the final charge chose a planet-sized mobile fortress. The crystalline collective's hive mind requested quantum processing cores that would boost their computational power 1,000-fold. Marcus had watched it all with growing unease. As the only human representative among the honored, he knew his turn was coming. The weight of representing his entire species pressed down on him like a physical force. Earth was still considered a developing world by galactic standards, humanity barely 2 centuries into space travel, while some of these civilizations had been exploring the stars for millions of years. "Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran Federation," announced the Council's prime speaker, a being of pure energy whose voice resonated through dimensions. "Step forward." The massive hall fell silent. Marcus walked across the crystalline floor, his military boots echoing in the vast space. Behind him, he could feel the weight of every human's hopes and dreams. Earth's entire future might depend on what happened in the next few minutes. The prime speaker's form shifted and pulsed. "Human warrior, your actions during the Battle of the Shattered Moon were unexpected. When 17 Void Devourer hive ships broke through our defensive line, when all seemed lost, you piloted a single human fighter craft into their formation." Holographic displays around the hall showed the battle footage. Marcus watched himself diving his tiny ship between creatures the size of moons, each one capable of consuming entire solar systems. The other species had been retreating, preparing for a final desperate stand at their home worlds. "You did not retreat," the prime speaker continued. "You did not call for backup. You flew directly into the largest devourer and somehow triggered a cascade reaction that destroyed their entire fleet. The war ended in that moment, saved by the sacrifice you were prepared to make." Marcus nodded stiffly. He remembered that day differently than the recording showed. Yes, he had flown into the enemy formation, but not out of heroic sacrifice. He had been running calculations in his head, looking for patterns in the creature's biosignatures. Humans were good at pattern recognition, at finding order in chaos. He had noticed that the largest devourer was channeling energy from all the others, creating a network that could be disrupted if hit at precisely the right frequency and location. "As is our ancient custom," the prime speaker announced, "you may choose your reward from any treasure in our vast collection, technologies that reshape reality itself, knowledge that spans the birth and death of universes, powers that place you among the gods themselves." The hall's floor became transparent, revealing the Council's legendary vault stretching down into seemingly infinite depths. Floating platforms held wonders that made human science look like crude cave paintings. Marcus saw devices that could terraform dead worlds in minutes, consciousness transfer technology that granted true immortality, and weapons capable of igniting stars. But his eyes were drawn to something else entirely. In the far corner of the vault, barely visible among the gleaming treasures, sat a simple metal cage. Inside it was the most hideous creature Marcus had ever seen, a writhing mass of tentacles, eyes, and what might have been mouths, constantly shifting between forms as if it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. The thing was roughly humanoid in size, but seemed to bend space around itself in impossible ways. The prime speaker followed his gaze. "Ah, you notice the aberrant. That creature has been in our vault for over 1,000,000 standard years. No species has ever wanted it. It is unsettling to look upon, as you can see. It appears to be intelligent, but has never communicated with any of our linguists. It simply exists, watching, waiting." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. The creature's multiple eyes seemed to be looking directly at him, and in them he saw something that made his throat go dry: intelligence. Not just intelligence, but a vast, patient intelligence that had been waiting for exactly this moment. "What do we know about its origins?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. "Very little," the prime speaker admitted. "It was found drifting in deep space by a collector expedition. All attempts to study it have failed. It seems to exist partially outside our normal dimensions. Our scientists believe it may be from a universe with different physical laws entirely. The creature shifted slightly in its cage, and Marcus caught a glimpse of something that made his blood freeze. For just a moment, the chaos of its form resolved into a pattern, and that pattern looked remarkably like the biosignature he had seen in the Void Devourers before their destruction. Around the hall, representatives from dozens of species waited for his choice. Many seemed amused that the primitive human was taking so long to decide, probably expecting him to choose some shiny bauble appropriate for his species' technological level. Marcus's mind raced through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. If this creature was connected to the Void Devourers, if it was somehow their origin or their controller, then keeping it in this vault was like storing a nuclear bomb in a children's playground. But more than that, the patient intelligence in those alien eyes suggested it had been waiting for someone specific. Someone who understood patterns, someone who could see connections others missed, someone human. The other species were looking at this moment as a reward ceremony, but Marcus was beginning to understand it was something else entirely. This was a test, or perhaps a trap, and the fate of not just humanity but the entire galaxy might depend on his next words. The creature in the cage continued to watch him, and Marcus could swear he saw something like anticipation in its impossible features. It wanted to be chosen. It had been waiting 1,000,000 years for someone to choose it. The question was, why? Marcus took a deep breath, knowing he was about to make a decision that would change everything. The safe choice would be to select some advanced technology, return to Earth as a hero, and let someone else worry about mysterious alien creatures with questionable origins. But the safe choice might doom them all. "I have made my decision," Marcus announced, his voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness focused on him with the intensity of a solar flare. The Prime Speaker's energy form brightened with interest. "Speak, human warrior. What reward do you choose for saving our galaxy?" Marcus pointed directly at the cage in the corner of the vault. "I choose the aberrant." The silence that followed was so complete it seemed to have physical weight. Then the hall erupted in confused murmurs, shocked gasps, and what sounded like laughter from some of the more advanced species. A human choosing the one thing no one else wanted. It confirmed every stereotype about their primitive understanding. But Marcus wasn't listening to the crowd. He was watching the creature in the cage, and what he saw there made his decision feel both completely right and absolutely terrifying. The thing that called itself the Aberrant was smiling. The transport ship carrying Marcus and his unusual reward back to Earth was perhaps the most uncomfortable vessel he had ever been aboard, and he had spent years flying combat missions in cramped fighter cockpits. The discomfort had nothing to do with the ship's amenities. The Galactic Council had provided a luxury cruiser complete with regeneration pods and quantum entertainment systems. The problem was his traveling companion. The creature sat in the center of the ship's main hold, its cage having been replaced with what the Council called a containment field, essentially invisible walls that kept it confined to a specific area. The thing hadn't spoken since coming aboard, but Marcus could feel its attention on him constantly, like being watched by a predator that was in no hurry to strike. Dr. Sarah Winters, Earth's leading xenobiologist, stood as far from the containment field as possible while still being able to take readings with her equipment. She had been assigned to the mission at the last minute when Marcus's request to bring the creature to Earth had been approved. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted her sensors. "Captain, I've run every scan I can think of," she said, her voice tight with strain. "This thing defies every law of biology I know. Its cellular structure shifts constantly, its DNA, if we can even call it, that appears to be written in base 16 instead of base 4, and it's emitting quantum signatures that shouldn't be possible for organic matter." Marcus nodded, keeping his eyes on the creature. It had been maintaining a roughly humanoid shape since boarding, but details kept shifting. Sometimes it had 2 arms, sometimes 4. The number of eyes varied between 1 and dozens. The only constant was its size and the unmistakable sense that it was studying everything around it with scientific precision. "What's your professional opinion, Doctor?" Marcus asked. "My professional opinion," Dr. Winters laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My professional opinion is that we should jettison this thing into the nearest star before it decides to stop being cooperative. Whatever it is, it's not from our universe, and bringing it to Earth might be the biggest mistake in human history." The creature's form rippled, and for a moment Marcus could have sworn he saw amusement in its features. It understood them perfectly, he realized. It had been listening to every conversation, learning their language, their mannerisms, their fears. "Sir," came a voice from the ship's communication system. Commander Patricia Rodriguez, Earth's liaison to the Galactic Council, had been trying to understand the political implications of Marcus's choice. "I've been reviewing the Council records. The official story about finding this creature drifting in space. It doesn't match the classified reports." Marcus felt his stomach drop. What do the classified reports say? According to those files, the creature wasn't found drifting. It was discovered inside a void devourer hive ship that had been destroyed in a battle over 1 million years ago. The ship was completely dead, had been for millennia, but this thing was still alive inside it, apparently unaged. The creature's attention shifted to the communication system, and Marcus saw what might have been irritation cross its features. It hadn't wanted that information shared. Dr. Winter's equipment began beeping frantically. "Captain, the quantum signatures are spiking. Whatever it's doing, it's drawing energy from somewhere." Marcus stepped closer to the containment field, his instincts screaming at him to run, but his mind demanding he understand what was happening. "You can understand us, can't you?" The creature stopped shifting. For the first time since leaving the Council's vault, it became completely still, its form resolving into something almost human. Almost. When it spoke, its voice was like an echo from the bottom of an ocean, layered with harmonics that seemed to come from multiple throats. "Understanding is such a limited concept, human Marcus Chen. Your species processes information in linear sequences, building knowledge piece by piece like constructing a shelter from stones. We see patterns across dimensions, connections that span the birth and death of universes." Dr. Winter's scanner clattered to the floor. Did it just speak?" "We have been watching your species for longer than your star has burned," the creature continued, its eyes now focused entirely on Marcus. "Humans possess something unique among the sapient races, the ability to see chaos and find order, to recognize patterns that others miss. This is why you were able to defeat the Devourers when civilizations 1 million years older failed." Marcus felt pieces of a vast puzzle clicking into place in his mind. "The Void Devourers, you created them, didn't you?" The creature's form rippled with what might have been laughter. "Created implies intention, purpose. We simply existed, and existence has consequences. The Devourers were one such consequence, fragments of our realm that broke through into yours. We could have stopped them at any time." "But you didn't," Marcus said, understanding flooding through him like ice water. "You let them terrorize the galaxy. You let billions die." "Death is temporary," the creature replied. "Understanding is eternal. We needed to observe how different species react to absolute extinction. Most react with logic, strategy, cooperation. They fail because they cannot grasp chaos. But humans dive into chaos and find patterns that should not exist." Commander Rodriguez's voice came through the communication system, tight with rage. "You used us. You used our entire species as test subjects." "We tested everyone," the creature corrected. "Your species passed, the others did not. This is why we allowed ourselves to be captured, to be displayed in the Council's vault. We waited for the one who would see the pattern, who would choose what others rejected." Dr. Winters had backed against the far wall of the hold. "Captain, we need to space this thing right now, if it can create more void devourers." "We will not create devourers again," the creature interrupted. "That test is complete, but there are other tests, other challenges that the galaxy will face. The universe is vast, and we are not its only inhabitants." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "There are others like you out there. Entities that exist beyond your dimensional understanding. Yes, many. Some are curious about carbon-based life as we are. Others see it as a contamination to be cleansed. And some," the creature paused, its form flickering between shapes, "some hunger for experiences they cannot have in their native dimensions. They wish to taste fear, to understand suffering, to experience destruction from the inside." The ship's hull groaned around them as if responding to the creature's words. Marcus realized they were no longer alone in space. Something vast was approaching, something that existed partially outside normal reality. "They have found us," the creature said with what sounded remarkably like satisfaction. "The first real test begins now, human Marcus Chen. We chose you because your species has proven capable of finding patterns in impossible chaos. You will need that ability in the next few minutes. Through the ship's viewports, Marcus could see space itself beginning to warp and twist. Stars were bending into impossible geometries, and in the center of the distortion, something was taking shape, something that made the creature and their hold look comfortingly normal by comparison. "What do you want from us?" Marcus demanded. The creature's multiple eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his vision blur. "We want to see if humanity can survive what is coming. If you can, then the galaxy has hope. If you cannot." It didn't finish the sentence. It didn't need to. Marcus grabbed the ship's internal communication system. "All hands, prepare for contact with an unknown hostile entity. Dr. Winters, I need every bit of data you can gather. Commander Rodriguez, get me a direct line to Earth Defense Command." "And what are you going to tell them?" Rodriguez asked. Marcus looked at the creature, which was now watching the approaching distortion with what seemed like professional interest. "I'm going to tell them that the war we just won was apparently just the entrance exam for the real test." The creature's form rippled with approval. "Now you begin to understand, human. The question is, will understanding be enough?" Outside, whatever was approaching had finished materializing, and Marcus realized with growing horror that it was heading directly for Earth. The emergency klaxons aboard Earth Defense Station Omega had been wailing for 17 minutes when Marcus's transmission finally reached the command center. Admiral Sarah Blackwood stared at the tactical display showing the impossible readings coming from the edge of the solar system, trying to process what her sensors were telling her. "Say that again, Captain Chen," she said into her communicator, though she had heard him perfectly the first time. Marcus's voice crackled through subspace interference that shouldn't have existed. "Admiral, we are dealing with entities that exist outside normal dimensional space. The creature I brought back from the Council, it's not a prisoner, it's an observer, and what's approaching Earth appears to be something called a hunger." Admiral Blackwood had commanded Earth's defenses for 15 years. She had faced down void devourers, political crises, and budget committees. None of that had prepared her for this conversation. "Captain, your current position shows you're still 6 hours out from Earth. Our sensors are detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the system. What exactly are we looking at?" On the tactical display, the distortion was growing larger by the minute. It appeared to be some kind of bubble in space itself, expanding outward from a point near Jupiter's orbit. Inside the bubble, the laws of physics seemed to be having a nervous breakdown. Planets were phasing in and out of existence, stars were burning in impossible colors, and the space between them writhed like living tissue. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's top theoretical physicist, looked up from her calculations with the expression of someone whose worldview had just been fed through a blender. "Admiral, based on the quantum resonance patterns, whatever is inside that distortion is creating localized changes to the fundamental constants of reality, if it reaches Earth." "It would unmake us," Admiral Blackwood finished grimly. "Not destroy us, unmake us, as if we had never existed." Marcus's voice came through again, tight with strain. "The aberrant, the creature, it says this entity feeds on experiences it can't have in its native dimension. It wants to taste what it's like to live in linear time, to experience fear and hope and desperation. The only way it can do that is by consuming civilizations that actually experience those things." Admiral Blackwood activated the General Fleet Channel. "All ships, this is command. Implement Protocol 7 immediately. I want every available vessel between that distortion and Earth in the next 30 minutes. Captain James Morrison of the Dreadnought Enterprise was the first to respond. "Admiral, Protocol 7 is for asteroid impacts. Our weapons aren't designed to fight spatial distortions." "Then we'll improvise, Captain. We've done it before." But even as she spoke, Admiral Blackwood knew this was different. The entire Earth defense fleet consisted of ships designed to fight conventional threats, energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, even exotic matter warheads. How did you fight something that existed partially outside reality? On Marcus's ship, Dr. Winters was frantically trying to make sense of readings that defied every scientific principle she knew. "Captain, the creature is emitting some kind of stabilization field. Without it, I think our ship would have been unmade the moment that thing appeared." The aberrant had been silent since the hunger's arrival, its form more stable than Marcus had ever seen it. Now it spoke, its voice carrying an edge of something that might have been concern. "The hunger approaches more quickly than expected. It has learned patience over the eons, but the prospect of experiencing an entire world's death throes has made it eager. Marcus studied the tactical display showing the distortion's expansion. How do we fight something like this? You cannot fight it directly, the aberrant replied. It exists across 11 dimensions simultaneously. Your weapons touch only 3, but there is a way to make it vulnerable. Dr. Winters looked up from her instruments. The quantum resonance patterns, they're not random. There's a mathematical progression hidden in the chaos. The aberrant's form rippled with approval. Your species' pattern recognition serves you well. The hunger maintains its multidimensional existence through a complex harmonic sequence. Disrupt that sequence, and it will be forced to exist entirely in your three-dimensional space. Marcus felt the familiar sensation of pieces falling into place, the same feeling he'd had when analyzing the Void Devourer's formation. You're talking about a resonance cascade. If we could match the frequency and phase it properly, the hunger would become vulnerable to conventional attack, the aberrant confirmed. But calculating the precise frequency requires understanding patterns that span multiple dimensions. Most species cannot perceive such patterns. But humans can, Marcus realized. It wasn't a question. Admiral Blackwood's voice crackled through the communication system. Captain, whatever you're planning, you'd better do it fast. The distortion has reached Mars' orbit, and our advanced scouts report that Mars is changing. The planet's rotation is revering, its atmosphere is turning solid, and there are structures growing on its surface that shouldn't be able to exist. Marcus grabbed the ship's internal comm. Commander Rodriguez, I need you to patch me into the quantum analysis computers at MIT and the Institute for Advanced Mathematics. Dr. Winters, start recording every energy reading you can get from that distortion. We're going to need raw data to build our resonance map. Sir, Rodriguez responded, the communication delays alone will make real-time calculations impossible. The aberrant spoke again, its voice now carrying an urgency Marcus hadn't heard before. There is no time for your computational methods. The pattern must be seen, not calculated. Human intuition, your ability to perceive order in chaos, this is what is required. Marcus stared at the tactical display, watching the impossible geometries writhing within the distortion. He thought about the moment he had seen the Void Devourer's pattern, that instant of clarity when chaos had resolved into order. But this was different. This was pattern spread across dimensions he couldn't even perceive. I can't see 11 dimensions, he said. You don't need to, the aberrant replied. We will serve as your eyes into the additional dimensions. You must trust us. Dr. Winters looked horrified. Captain, we don't know what kind of mental interface it's proposing. The neural feedback could kill you. Marcus thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea their entire reality was about to be unmade by a hungry entity from beyond space. He thought about the other worlds in the galaxy, all looking to humanity as the species that could find patterns where others failed. Do it, he said to the aberrant. The creature extended what might have been a hand toward the containment field's controls. Lower the barrier, human Marcus Chen. To see what we see, you must touch what we touch. Marcus's hand moved toward the field controls. Admiral Blackwood's voice was shouting through the communicator, demanding to know what was happening. Dr. Winters was backing away, her equipment screaming warnings about quantum field fluctuations. Commander Rodriguez was trying to establish emergency protocols for a situation that had never been anticipated. The moment Marcus's fingers touched the controls, the containment field flickered and died. The aberrant flowed toward him like liquid chaos, and Marcus felt its touch as a sensation beyond anything human neurology was designed to process. Reality exploded around him in all directions, showing him patterns that stretched across impossible geometries. And in that explosion of perception, he finally saw it, the hunger's harmonic sequence, spread across 11 dimensions like a vast, discordant symphony. But more than that, he saw its weakness, the frequency that would collapse its multidimensional existence into 3 simple dimensions. The only question was whether his human mind could survive long enough to share what he had learned. Around him, the ship's hull began to sing with harmonics that touched frequencies beyond the range of human hearing. In the distance, Earth's defense fleet was taking position for a battle they didn't understand against an enemy they couldn't see. And somewhere in the expanding distortion, an ancient hunger sensed that something had changed. that its prey had somehow gained the ability to see across the dimensional barriers. The real battle was about to begin. Pain exploded through Marcus's consciousness as 11 dimensions worth of sensory input flooded into a brain evolved to process only 3. For a terrifying moment, he felt his sense of self dissolving into the cosmic patterns flowing through the aberrant's perception. He was simultaneously standing on his ship and floating in the void between galaxies, touching the controls and grasping the edge of reality itself. "Focus, human," the aberrant's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, no longer heard but directly experienced as thought. "Your mind seeks to process all information at once. Select only what serves your purpose." Through the chaos of multidimensional awareness, Marcus forced himself to concentrate on the approaching distortion. What had seemed like random spatial warping from his human perspective now revealed itself as an intricate dance of mathematical precision. The hunger moved through folded space like a predator swimming through an ocean of collapsed dimensions. But there, in the precise way it maintained its coherence across impossible geometries, Marcus saw the pattern he needed. "Dr. Winters," he managed to say through gritted teeth, his voice sounding strange even to himself. "I need you to configure the ship's gravitational wave generators to broadcast on multiple frequencies simultaneously." "Captain, you're bleeding from your eyes," Dr. Winters said, her voice tight with concern. "Whatever that thing is doing to you." "The frequencies," Marcus insisted, rattling off a series of numbers that came from his expanded perception. The mathematical sequence was burned into his consciousness now, precise down to 17 decimal places. "Commander Rodriguez, transmit those settings to Admiral Blackwood. Every ship in the fleet needs to synchronize their gravitational wave generators to this exact pattern." Admiral Blackwood's voice crackled through the communication system. "Captain Chen, our gravitational wave generators are designed for communication, not weapons. The power requirements for what you're suggesting would drain our entire fleet's energy reserves in minutes." Through the aberrant senses, Marcus could see the hunger beginning to focus its attention on Earth's defense fleet. The entity was amused by their preparations, the way a cat might be entertained by a mouse's attempts to defend itself. But there was something else in its multidimensional attention, a growing curiosity about the ship broadcasting the resonance patterns. "Admiral, the hunger is starting to notice us," Marcus said. "We have maybe 10 minutes before it decides we're enough of a threat to deal with directly." Dr. Winters was frantically adjusting the ship's systems, her hands flying over controls as she tried to implement Marcus's specifications. "Captain, the power requirements are beyond our capacity. Even if I reroute everything from life support, we can only maintain this frequency pattern for maybe 30 seconds. The aberrant's form had become more solid since touching Marcus, as if the contact was stabilizing it in normal space. 30 seconds will be sufficient if the timing is precise, but the hunger will sense the resonance buildup. It will attempt to interrupt the sequence." Marcus watched through 11-dimensional perception as Earth's defense fleet arranged itself into formation. Admiral Blackwood had positioned the ships according to his transmitted coordinates, though she couldn't possibly understand why those specific positions were necessary. From a 3-dimensional perspective, the formation looked random, almost chaotic, but viewed across multiple dimensions, it formed a perfect resonance chamber. "All ships report ready," Admiral Blackwood announced. "Captain Chen, I hope you know what you're doing. Half the Galactic Council is monitoring this engagement, and if Earth's defense fleet gets wiped out by an entity we can't even see properly, it's going to raise some uncomfortable questions about humanity's role in the galaxy." The irony wasn't lost on Marcus. Here they were, trying to save Earth using technology they barely understood, guided by a creature that had been imprisoned for 1,000,000 years, fighting an enemy that existed partially outside reality. It was exactly the kind of impossible situation humans seem to excel at. "Beginning resonance buildup," Dr. Winters announced. The ship's hull began to vibrate with harmonics that seemed to reach into dimensions Marcus could feel but not name. Through his expanded senses, he could perceive the other ships in the fleet beginning their own frequency generation, their combined output starting to form the complex pattern needed to collapse the hunger's multidimensional existence. The effect was immediate. The distortion surrounding the approaching entity began to fluctuate, its smooth expansion suddenly becoming erratic. For the first time since its appearance, the hunger seemed to notice it was facing actual opposition. Marcus felt the entity's attention turn toward their ship like the gaze of a malevolent god. Through the aberrant's perception, he could see the creature's true form, a writhing mass of need and appetite that existed across so many dimensions it hurt to contemplate. But more terrifying was its intelligence. This wasn't some mindless force of destruction. It was ancient, patient, and absolutely furious that its feeding had been interrupted. "It's focusing on us," Marcus warned. "The resonance pattern is disrupting its dimensional coherence, but it's trying to eliminate the source." Space around their ship began to warp. The stars outside shifted positions, and Marcus could see parallel versions of their reality flickering in and out of existence. In one, their ship had never been built. In another, humanity had never evolved. The hunger was trying to find a dimensional frequency where they didn't exist. "All ships, maximum power to gravitational wave generators now," Admiral Blackwood commanded. The response was immediate. Marcus felt the resonance pattern lock into place as 57 ships across the solar system synchronized their output. The effect on the hunger was dramatic. Its multi-dimensional form began to collapse, forced into the three-dimensional space where human weapons could actually affect it. But the entity wasn't helpless. As it lost its access to higher dimensions, it concentrated its remaining power into a direct assault on Earth's fleet. Energy that existed outside the normal electromagnetic spectrum lashed out at the human ships, and several vessels simply ceased to exist, erased from reality so thoroughly that even their radiation signatures vanished. "We're losing ships," Admiral Blackwood reported, her voice grim. "Dreadnought Yamato and cruisers New Tokyo and Berlin have been eliminated. Whatever this thing is firing, our shields are useless against it." Through the aberrant senses, Marcus could see the hunger's desperation. The resonance pattern was working, forcing the entity to exist primarily in three dimensions, but it still had enough multi-dimensional capability to strike back at its attackers. They needed to complete the frequency lock before it could eliminate enough ships to disrupt the pattern. "Dr. Winters, how long can we maintain our part of the resonance?" "Maybe 15 more seconds," she replied, sweat beading on her forehead as she manually adjusted power distribution to keep their systems from overloading. The aberrant's form flickered, its stability decreasing as it channeled more energy into maintaining Marcus's expanded perception. "The moment is approaching, human. When the hunger is fully collapsed into your dimensional space, you will have perhaps 5 seconds to destroy it before it adapts to its new limitations." Marcus opened a channel to Admiral Blackwood. "Admiral, the moment I give the word, I need every ship to target the center of the distortion with everything they have. Quantum torpedoes, antimatter charges, everything." "Understood, Captain." The hunger's form was becoming more solid by the second, its impossible geometries condensing into something that merely violated physics rather than making physics weep. Marcus could see it now with his normal human vision, a writhing mass of darkness and appetite hanging in space near Earth's orbit, tentacles of pure need reaching out toward the blue-green world it had come to consume. "Now," Marcus shouted. The combined firepower of Earth's defense fleet struck the hunger simultaneously, dozens of antimatter warheads, hundreds of quantum torpedoes, and energy beams that could crack planetary surfaces. For a moment, the entity was hidden behind an expanding sphere of destruction that outshone the sun. When the light faded, the hunger was still there, but it was wounded. Pieces of its multi-dimensional form had been blown away, and the remainder was solidifying into something almost recognizably alien rather than impossibly abstract. But it was also adapting to three-dimensional existence with terrifying speed, and its next attack would be launched from a framework of physics that human weapons were actually designed to fight. The question was whether they had done enough damage to give themselves a chance, or whether they had simply turned an impossible enemy into a merely overwhelming one. The wounded hunger hung in space like a nightmare made manifest, its form now solid enough to be properly seen by human eyes. What had once been an impossible abstraction of appetite spread across 11 dimensions was now a writhing mass of organic darkness roughly the size of Luna, bristling with organs that served purposes no human mind could comprehend. But it was learning. Marcus could see it through his fatting connection to the aberrant senses. The entity was rapidly adapting to three-dimensional existence, discovering how to manipulate matter and energy within the confines of normal physics. Tendrils of living darkness reached out from its central mass, testing the properties of local space-time. "All ships maintain distance and continue bombardment," Admiral Blackwood commanded. "Do not let that thing figure out how our weapons work." Too late. Even as she spoke, the Hunger extended a pseudopod toward the nearest human vessel, the destroyer Constellation. The tendril moved with impossible precision, somehow anticipating the ship's evasive maneuvers. When it made contact, the destroyer's hull began to change, its metal transforming into the same organic darkness that comprised the entity's body. "Constellation, report," Admiral Blackwood called. Captain Sarah Kim's voice came back strained but determined. "Admiral, the hull breach isn't spreading, but whatever touched us is. Learning. I'm reading massive data transfers from our computer systems. It's downloading everything: ship schematics, weapon specifications, tactical databases." Marcus felt his expanded perception finally starting to fade as the aberrant withdrew from his mind. The relief was immediate. The constant input from 11 dimensions had felt like trying to drink from a fire hose. But with normal, human awareness came the terrifying realization of how desperate their situation had become. "The Hunger has our technology now," Marcus said to Dr. Winters, who was slumped over her controls, exhausted from maintaining their part of the resonance pattern. "It's going to start building weapons we can't defend against." The aberrant's form had become translucent again, its energy depleted from the extended contact, but its voice still carried clearly through the ship's bridge. "Not building, human Marcus Chen, becoming. The Hunger does not use tools, it incorporates useful patterns into its own structure. Your weapons will soon be part of its body." Even as it spoke, organic protrusions began emerging from the entity's surface structures that looked disturbingly familiar. Marcus recognized the barrel configuration of quantum torpedo launchers, the focusing arrays of particle beam weapons, and the field generators for deflector shields. The Hunger was literally growing Earth's own weapons from its flesh. Admiral Blackwood's tactical display showed the grim mathematics of their situation. Earth's defense fleet had been reduced to 31 operational ships. Their ammunition reserves were running low, and now they faced an enemy that possessed all their weapons technology, plus the durability of something that had survived in the void between dimensions for eons. "Captain Chen," Admiral Blackwood's voice was steady despite the hopelessness of their position. "I need options. What does your alien friend suggest we do now?" Marcus looked at the aberrant whose form was continuing to fade. "You planned this," he realized. "You knew this would happen." "We knew the Hunger would adapt," the creature confirmed. "It always does, but adaptation requires understanding, and understanding creates vulnerability. The entity now thinks in three-dimensional terms, follows three-dimensional logic. It has become predictable in ways it never was before." Dr. Winters looked up from her instruments. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy buildups throughout the creature's structure. It's preparing to fire those improvised weapons." The first volley came moments later. Quantum torpedoes launched from organic tubes, particle beams focused through crystalline structures that had grown from the entity's hide. But something was wrong with their targeting. The weapons fired in patterns that made sense for the Hunger's original 11-dimensional existence, but were inefficient in normal space. "It's thinking too big," Marcus realized. "It's trying to hit us across multiple dimensions that no longer exist for it." The insight sparked an idea that was either brilliant or suicidal. "Admiral, I need all ships to adopt random movement patterns, no logic to them at all. The Hunger is trying to predict our movements using mathematics that work across 11 dimensions. If we move chaotically, it can't anticipate our positions. Chaotic movement patterns will make it impossible for us to coordinate our own attacks," Admiral Blackwood pointed out. "Then we don't coordinate," Marcus said. "We do what humans do best: we improvise." Admiral Blackwood was quiet for a moment. Then, "All ships, you heard the captain. Random movement, individual targeting, and for God's sake, don't do anything that makes logical sense. We're going to fight like humans." The effect was immediate. Earth's remaining ships scattered in all directions, their movements guided by nothing more sophisticated than their captain's intuition. Some dove toward the entity's surface, others spiraled away at impossible angles, and a few simply hung motionless in defiance of tactical logic. The Hunger's return fire became increasingly erratic as it tried to process movement patterns that followed no rational system. Its weapons, designed around the mathematical certainties of higher dimensional existence, couldn't adapt to the beautiful chaos of human unpredictability. But the entity was learning from each miss, each successful human maneuver adding to its understanding of three-dimensional combat. They had bought time, not victory. The aberrant's form was now barely visible, its energy almost completely exhausted. There is one final pattern you must see, human Marcus Chen. The hunger's greatest vulnerability lies not in what it has become, but in what it can never be. Marcus felt the creature's presence touch his mind one last time, not the overwhelming flood of 11-dimensional awareness, but a single, precise image. He saw the hunger not as it appeared in normal space, but as it truly was a creature of pure appetite that had never experienced limitation, never known boundaries, never understood the concept of mortality. It doesn't know how to die, Marcus breathed. The realization hit him like lightning. The hunger had existed across multiple dimensions for so long that it had no experience with true vulnerability, no instinct for self-preservation when faced with genuine threat. It fought not because it feared destruction, but because feeding was its only conceivable purpose. Marcus opened a fleet-wide channel. All ships, concentrate fire on the entity's core structure. Don't aim for the weapons or defenses, hit it where it lives. Show it what mortality feels like. The final battle was unlike anything in human military history. 31 ships diving through a storm of organic weapons fire, their captains following instinct rather than training, their crews pushing systems beyond design limits because logic said they should have been dead already. The hunger's death, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. The concentrated firepower of Earth's fleet penetrated its core structure and found something that had never learned to protect itself properly. The entity's death scream echoed across dimensions, a sound of genuine surprise from something that had never contemplated its own ending. As the creature's remains dispersed into cosmic dust, Marcus felt a profound sense of completion. Humanity had faced a test they couldn't possibly have prepared for and somehow found a way to succeed. Not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the uniquely human gift of finding patterns in chaos and hope in impossibility. The aberrant spoke one final time, its voice now just a whisper across Marcus's consciousness. We have observed many species, human Marcus Chen. Most face the unknown with fear or logic. Only humans face it with curiosity. This is why we chose you. This is why the galaxy needs your kind. Admiral Blackwood's voice came through the communication system, tired but triumphant. Captain Chen, Earth Defense Command is showing all clear. Whatever that thing was, it's gone. But I think we need to have a very long conversation about what else might be out there. Marcus looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in the vast darkness, other entities like the hunger were stirring, other tests were waiting. But he also knew that humanity had proven something important today. When faced with the impossible, humans didn't surrender or despair. They found a way to win. The aberrant's form faded completely, but its final message remained clear in Marcus's mind. The first test is complete. Prepare for what comes next. As their ship turned toward Earth, Marcus reflected on his choice in the Council's vault. He had picked the most hideous alien not from mercy, but from a fear of what might happen if he chose wrong. That fear had been justified, but it had also saved them all. Sometimes the greatest rewards came disguised as the worst possible choices.